Hello, welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel and week 2 of the Bernat Blanket Stitch Along with our friends from JOANN.com. I am thrilled to be teaching this knit along to all of you out there, both beginner and advanced knitters, and hopefully some of the tips and tricks that I have along the way will help you become even better knitters. For this week's instructions, we are using 2 colors, color C and color D. Along with these 2 colors, you will need a good pair of scissors, a tape measure, and a stitch marker. Along with the materials, you need that free pattern. You can find the free pattern link in the video description box right below this video. And while you're down there, smash that like button, as my kids say. All right, once you have the pattern and you have your materials, make sure you have your homework completed from week 1. We can jump in and learn everything we need to know for the week 2 instructions. At the end of week 1, we finished up with this garter stitch section using color C, and we worked our row of increases to get the right stitch count for this week's set of instructions. This week, we're going to learn how to make a knitted bobble. Bobbles are so much fun to make, and they add a lot of fun dimension to your fabric. You will make a knitted bobble on the wrong side of the fabric and then push it over to the right side of the fabric. As you're making the bobbles, we will also be changing colors, which we know how to do because we did that in week 1. The difference here is that as we go from color D to color C, we will not cut color D. We will float it up along the side until we need it again. But we will be cutting color C each time we change colors. I am very excited to show you how to make a knitted bobble. They are super fun to make and add a lot of impact to your blanket. I will first show you how to make the bobble as written in the instructions, and then I will show you an extra special little way to make a bobble that will make it so that you don't have to turn your work back and forth. So make sure you watch the video all the way through to get all of those extra little tips. All right, if you are ready, go ahead and grab your homework and we will jump in with the knitted bobble. Okay, knitters, first off, for this week's instructions, you will notice that there are a new set of abbreviations used in the pattern this week. There's also a new gauge, so make sure you are maintaining this gauge pattern for the bobble stitch. We will go ahead and jump in with our instructions right here. We begin by joining our color D to our work. As you know, after week 1, I like to go ahead and tie my new color around my old color just to hold it in place, knowing that I will undo that knot at the end of the project and weave in my end, so that way I don't have a knot at the side of my work. Once I have that attached, I will then go ahead and place a marker at the beginning of this row. So what I could do here is I am going to place my marker directly into that first pink stitch there. All right, and what that's going to do is that later on in the pattern, we will use our tape measure to measure 12 inches or 30.5 centimeters from that marked stitch. After you've joined the yarn and marked the stitch, you can carry on in the pattern, and we're going to work in stockinette stitch. Now, here's a quick reminder. When you work in stockinette stitch, anytime you're on the right side of the fabric, you are going to knit. Anytime you are on the wrong side of the fabric, you will purl those stitches. Remember, in this pattern, we're keeping the first and the last stitch in garter stitch. So on the wrong side, you will also knit the first stitch and the last stitch. Now that I've given you the reminder about stockinette stitch, let's go ahead and work the next 2 rows. You will knit this first row, and on the following row, you'll knit the first stitch, purl to the very end, and knit the last stitch. Then you are ready to go ahead and change colors once again. After working those 2 rows, it's time to go back to our color C. And remember, I told you at the start, we're not going to cut our color D. So let's go ahead and I will grab my color C here and I will tie it on to my color D, but I'm not going to cut my color D, okay? I'm just gonna let it hang out there. Now I will go ahead and I will knit down this row using my pink color, which is my color C, and I will knit all the way down the row. And on the following row, that's when we will introduce the knitted bobble. I am coming up to the end of my row 3. And once I finish row 3, I will go ahead and turn my work. I am looking at the wrong side of my fabric, which is what I want to be facing me, because the bobble stitch is actually worked on the wrong side of the fabric. When we make a bobble stitch, we will be working many stitches into one stitch to create a bunch of fabric in one section to make that bobble. So we will actually be working several stitches into this one stitch, and we will turn our work back and forth as we're working into that one stitch. I say all that so that you are aware that you need to really pay attention in this section, because I will be turning my work back and forth, and I want to make sure you can keep up. All right, so let's jump into row 4. Row 4 begins with a knit 1. And now we have an MB, and that means make bobble. So I want to bring my yarn to the front between my needles. I will go into the next stitch as if to purl, and I will purl it. But I'm not going to let that stitch fall off my left-hand needle yet. I'm now going to go into the back leg of this same stitch as if to purl. So if I'm looking at it like this, I'm going from that side of the stitch to the opposite side. Can you see that? Okay, so I've gone, let's do that one more time. I'm going from this side through the stitch towards me, and I will purl the back leg of that stitch. Now I'm going to come back to the front and purl the front leg of the stitch again. Can you see that? So what I've done now, once I get that back through, is I've created 3 stitches where there was only 1. Okay, you with me so far? Now I'm going to go ahead and I will take that off of my left-hand needle, and these 3 stitches are all I'm going to work into now. So I turn my work just enough to where I can work into these 3 stitches, and I knit these 3 stitches. I turn my work so I'm back to the wrong side. Okay, make sure my yarn is in front. I'm going to purl 2, so I purl 1, and I'll purl 2. I'm going to pass the second stitch on my right hand needle, so it was the first one I purled. I'm going to grab it and have it jump up and over that first stitch, or the second stitch I purled, just like it was a bind off. Now I want to go ahead, purl the next stitch on my left hand needle. I will now slip these 2 stitches from the right hand needle over to the left hand needle, and I will have this stitch here, the second one, jump up and over the first one and off. I'm left with 1 stitch. I will move that stitch over to my right hand needle, and the bobble is complete. So here on this opposite side, you can see I've got that bulky fabric there. Can you see how it's bulging out? It'll be more noticeable as we go along. But all of those twists and turns, I'm still left with just 1 stitch. So we started with 1 stitch, we increased to 3, we then knit 1 row, and then we decreased down to create this nice bobble. I know there's a lot of you out there that are like, whoa, I don't know if I can do that. I believe in you. I know you can do it. I'm going to show you how to do it again here in just a second. So let's take our time and make sure that we get this right. I'll go slowly in the next bobble as well. So let's carry on with the instructions. The next set of the instructions here say that we're going to knit 3. So I'm going to bring my yarn to the back, and I will knit 3. 1, 2, and 3. And that is the end of my repeat. It's a 4-stitch repeat. So now it's time to make bobble again into this stitch. So I bring my yarn to the front. I'll go in to purl into the front leg of this next stitch. And then I'm going to purl into the back leg of that same stitch. Remember, I'm just going through the stitch just like that. It seems really awkward, guys, but I promise you will get it. Okay, you see how I'm through the back of the stitch? And I will purl it through the back leg of that stitch. And now I have to come back to the front again and purl through the front leg of the stitch. Now that I've created those 3 stitches, I can let this one fall off my left-hand needle. And this is where I begin to turn my work so I can build on those 3 stitches. So I turn my work and I knit those 3 stitches. Let me get my yarn in the correct place. So I will knit those 3 stitches. There's 1, 2, and 3. Turn my work so I'm back to the wrong side. And here's where I begin my decrease. So I will purl 1, purl the next one, have the first one I did jump up and over the second one just like it was being bound off. Then I will purl the third one, slip those 2 stitches to my left-hand needle, and you notice I'm going through the back leg. I'm not going through the front. I just go through the back leg and slip them over. Okay, now I'm going to have this stitch here, that was the 3rd purl I did, jump up and over that one. I'm left with 1 stitch, and I place that 1 stitch back on my right-hand needle, and the bobble is made. See that? I carry on in the pattern with my knit 3 to finish my repeat. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And I'm back to the make bobble. Can you see how my bobbles are really poking out here on the opposite side? Can you see that? I'm trying to make it so it's sort of on the side view. You can see how they're poking out. But they poke out on the right side even though we've made them on the wrong side. Pretty cool, right? Okay, now you know how to make a bobble in knitting. Pretty easy, right? It just takes a little concentration to make sure that you're working over the correct number of stitches and you increase out and decrease in when indicated. Now, at the start of this video, I mentioned I was going to show you another way to create a knitted bobble, and it requires a little technique called backwards knitting. It makes it so that you don't have to turn your work each time you want to work this bobble stitch. So let me show you how that is done. I am at the point of my pattern where it's time to make a bobble, so I will bring my yarn to the front between my needles, and I will work my increase. So this is my purl front, my purl back, and then my purl front again. I've created those 3 stitches where I only had 1 before, and this is the point of the pattern where I normally would turn and I would knit those 3 stitches. But instead of turning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to purl backwards. And the reason I would purl is because if I was on this side knitting, that means it would look like a purl on this side. Well, if I'm not going to turn, then I want these to remain purls, okay? Just think of it as stockinette. So what I want to do is take my left-hand needle and working into that leg of the stitch. So I'm going to call that the back from right to left. And it's like I'm going through the back leg. And I will yarn over my left-hand needle and pop that out and off. I'll do it again to the second one. Go around my left-hand needle, pop it out and off, and do that to the third. Go around, out, and off. So it's off of my right-hand needle. You see how that works? So now I have 3 stitches over here, and I'm ready to go into the next part of the instructions, which are purl 2, have the first one jump over the second, purl the third, slip those 2 stitches over, have the third jump over the remaining stitch there, move that stitch back over to the right hand needle and I've created a bobble without having to turn my work. See, there's my bobble right there in stockinette, just like before. No, this is not some sort of trickery or wizardry. I'll show you once again how to do that. Let's go ahead and finish up this repeat by working our knit 3. So 1, 2, 3, and it's time to make a bobble. So let's do it again. Bring our yarn forward, do our purl front, our purl back, and then our purl front again. So I have my 3 stitches here. Instead of turning my work, I will go into the back leg of each of those stitches and come up towards my yarn here and purl them. So I yarn over and purl, yarn over and purl, yarn over and purl. So I am purling those stitches off of my right hand needle instead of the other way where I normally purl off of my left hand needle. Now I carry on with the pattern. I don't have to turn, right? Because everything is still facing me in the direction I want. You can think of this as this is still stockinette because everything is still in stockinette. Let's purl my 3rd one. Slip those over. Have the 3rd jump over the remaining, put the remaining on the left, on the right, and we have a nice bobble right there, and I can carry on with my pattern. What do you think? You getting the hang of it? I do want to let you know that you do not have to work the backwards knitting bobble if you don't want to. If you don't mind turning your work back and forth just for those 3 stitches, please go ahead and just continue on with that. But if you want to try this and learn something new, give it a shot. It's just knitting, guys. You can pull it out with no problem, but try out this backwards knitting, or we're actually backwards purling. It's pretty fun. You will work this bobble stitch pattern all the way down this row. When you get to the end of the row, you will go ahead and break off your color C and then carry up your color D from where we left it. I'm going to get down to that part of this swatch and then we will learn how to carry up that color D and carry on in the pattern. I'm at the end of row 4 on my swatch here. I just finished with my bobble and my knit 1. I will go ahead and I will cut my color C, leaving a nice long tail so I can weave that in. What I'll do now is go ahead and grab my color D and float it up along those 2 rows that I just did using color C, and then carry on using my color D in the pattern. So with color D, I then go ahead and knit, and I'm back to my stockinette. So I'm looking at my right side, so I am just knitting down this row, and then I will continue on working in stockinette through row 8. At row 9, we change colors again, knit 1 row, and then on row 10, we do our bobbles. It's really that easy for this particular stitch pattern. Once you have finished through row 8, you're ready to begin row 9, and you're starting to really see these bobbles pucker up, especially along the background of the nice stockinette stitch. Remember that we are not going to cut our color D. We are going to grab our color C, rejoin it to the project. Again, I like to make that little overhand knot and just pull it right up close, and let the D color just hang out, and then carry on with your color C. The next 2 rows are very similar to the last time we used color C. We will knit this first row in order to get to the wrong side, and on the wrong side we'll create these bobbles once again. Let me go ahead and get to the bobble side once again so I can show you how to create those bobbles just for a quick reminder, and then we will talk about what you need to do for the rest of this week's homework. All right, I just finished my row 9. I'm ready to begin row 10, and looks like we start off here with our knit 1. Remember, we want to keep that edge into that garter stitch, so we start off with our knit 1. And now we begin our pattern repeat. So we will knit 2 and then do our bobble. So I bring my yarn between my needles, work my purl front, my purl back, and then my purl front again. Make sure that those stitches get to the full size of your needle, otherwise they'll be too tight. All right, so there's my 3 stitches. I'll show you the turning method first. So I turn my work. I will knit these 3 stitches. So I knit 1, 2, and 3. Turn my work again. Pull those down. And I purl the first 2. So I purl 1. Purl the second one. Have that first one I purl jump up and over the second one. And then I purl my third one. Slip those 2 stitches back to my left hand needle. Have this second one here jump up and over that one closest to the tip. And then move that remaining stitch back to my right hand needle because the bobble is complete. Bring my yarn to the back and finish my repeat with my knit 1. You can see my bobble is already really starting to take shape. It looks really good. Now let's go ahead and do another repeat, but this time we'll do the bobble without turning. So I start the repeat off with a knit 2. So knit 1 and knit 2. Here's where my bobble needs to go. So bring my yarn to the front, purl in the front leg, purl in the back leg, and then purl again in the front leg. So I get my 3 stitches. And I'm not going to turn this time, remember? So I'm going to take my left hand needle, going through the back leg from right to left, and I purl those stitches. So I'm backwards purling, essentially. Now I carry on to the next set of the instructions, which I purl 2, going back the normal way. Have that first one I purled jump up and over the second one I purled. Purl that third one. Move those stitches over. Have that one here jump over that one. Move that back over. Finish off my repeat by moving my yarn to the back and knitting 1. Again, there's my bobble, nice and neat, already poking out, and it looks just as good as the one I turned. All right, guys, let's go ahead, finish this row full of bobbles, and then we change colors once again, and then work 2 rows in stockinette with color D. This is my last repeat right here, and I'm left with 2 stitches, and I knit those 2 stitches. That brings me to the end of row 10. So I go ahead and snip or break off my color C. Again, always leaving a nice long tail to weave in later. And as I turn my work here, just like before, my color D is over here waiting for me. So I will float it up along the side here and carry on using my color D. But look how fun those bobbles are. Oh my gosh. They just add so much fun and play to your work. I think they're just a blast to make. All right, so we carry up with our color D. Make sure you're not pulling so tight that it tugs or anything. You don't want that. And then we go ahead and we will work in pattern for row 11 and 12, which is stockinette once again. So I start off with my knit all the way across the row. Give that a nice little pull there. And then when I get to the wrong side, I'll knit the first and last stitch, but purl all the stitches in between. All right, I am coming up to the end of my row 12 here. And what I want to point out is that these 12 rows that we just completed are the Bobble stitch pattern repeat. So looking at the piece that I've worked up here, from where we started off with our marker all the way up to the row I just finished, those are the 12 rows that make up the stitch pattern repeat for the Bobble, okay? It's really that easy. Your instructions now are to carry on with these 12 rows until this section measures 12 inches or 30.5 centimeters. So what you will do is you'll take your tape measure and you will measure from where you marked that stitch all the way up until you get to 12 inches. And you want to end on a row 12. Now, I will tell you that if you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm at 12 inches, but I'm at a row 10, what do I do? To me, I would go ahead, continue on through your row 12, and whatever that little extra inch is that you might have extra, just make sure you write that down. And then when we get to I think it's week 4, we also work that section for 12 inches, and maybe you work that section for the same length that you worked this section. Your final blanket's measurements will be a little bit off, but it won't be the end of the world. It's just much better that you end after a row 12, okay? So you want to make sure you do that. So to recap here, your homework is to work through this Bobble stitch pattern, rows 1 through 12, until this section measures 12 inches. Remember that you will not cut color D throughout this section. You will cut and rejoin color C though whenever it's time to do the bobbles. When we get to the end of this stitch along, I will show you how to weave in these tails to the wrong side of the fabric so that way they can disappear. So don't worry about the tails right now. The main thing you need to worry about is getting this really lush fabric done with these fun bobbles. I'm really excited to find out which way all of you are going to choose to make your bobbles. Will you turn your work, or will you give this purling backwards a try? Make sure you let me know in the comment section of this video or in the Facebook group. Let us know which way you prefer. Or did you try it out? Like, did you even try it out to give it a whirl? I would love to see your results. I can't wait to see all of your blankets. Make sure as you share them on social media, use hashtag #MarleyBird or hashtag #HandmadeWithJoann, so that way we can come around and smash your like button. I hope you are enjoying this Bernat Blanket stitch along with our friends at JOANN. I'm having a blast using this yarn, showing you how to make these fun stitches. I love making knitted bobbles, so this was a really fun week for me. Okay, you need to complete all of your homework for week 2 before you can move on to week 3. So you've got an entire week to do it. I know you can. Good luck. If you have questions, you know where to find me.